Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems.
Hey, I'm Jeff Carpenter, and I'm here with Brian Hess.
Howdy.
Now, you're an expert in all things analytics with respect to DataStax Enterprise, but today we're not going to talk with you about analytics. We're going to talk about bulk loading.
Another favorite topic of mine.
Okay, we've been trying to get you on the show for a very long time, just so that I could ask you my one non-bulk loading question, which is, okay, so now that we have DSE 6 out, and we're featuring the advanced performance, kind of like double the throughput, etc. That means that you can do twice the workload on the same hardware. Will we be able to remove some of the nodes from the sweater vest, or will we just double the workload?
I think we would double the workload. I get more done in this sweater vest now with DSE 6.
Okay, that's a good answer. We can roll with that. Okay,
right.
But I digress. We do want to talk about bulk loading. And okay, so this is one of those distributed systems, distributed database problems that no one really thinks about, like, top of mind.
It's sort of funny. Like when
I'm shopping for a new database, but what's the bulk loader like?
Right. It's sort of just assumed, right? This is just something you do. That was actually my experience when I first came to Cassandra. I started at DataStax and started working with Cassandra. And it was like, all right, so how to put the data in. And there was sort of like crickets, like, wait, you just start writing. And I'm like, well, but I have like a data set. I want to play with it. I know it. What do I do?
Okay, you started a little bit of stirred up a little bit of controversy then.
Yeah, it was a little bit funny, right? And then of course, the where should I start becomes this thing. I was new to Cassandra, like I said, so it really is that natural. And I don't think it's unique to DataStax Enterprise and Cassandra. I think it's just databases in general or data systems. I have data, I want to put it in, and then I want to work with it. This is like the out of the gate question. I think then you sort of, once you get past that, it becomes, what we've seen is become much more mechanical of data flows. I have a big data system, data's coming in of various ways. One of the ways will be like file, I just need to put it in and fast.
Right.
And so this becomes a regular occurrence, not just a newbie occurrence.
Okay. Yes, so it's a general problem
right.
That we have. Now let's talk about the specifics. Like, what was the previous state of the art for bulk loading with Cassandra and DSE?
Yeah, so I think the primary tool people looked at was cqlsh. So the SQL shell CQL shell for Cassandra had a copy from, copy to command.
Yes.
And so that
CSV.
Yep. It's actually I think any delimiter, you could change the delimiter. Had some settings, but so I started there when I came here, and of course I loaded like 1,000 records and was like, oh, perfect, right? No big deal. And
okay.
And then I went and got a bigger data set because 1,000 records is not really a distributed database kind of size. And you start to realize that tool was not really suited for it. A little slow, a little clumsy. Some of the data was not in a great format, and so it didn't handle errors very well. So it's a tool, and I still think, if you have a small amount of data and you just want to pop in the couple, 1,000 records, just use it. Like, that's fine.
Right.
The other big tool, if you do a Google search on Cassandra bulk loading, you'll get the sstableloader. Okay. And so ssstable is the proprietary form, or the internal format, I should say, of Cassandra for the back end of the database. Sstableloader will reload those somewhere. So if you have ssstables, it's great.
Okay, so that's not a bulk loader per se.
Yeah, I think of it more like a restore.
It's a restore
yeah,
tool.
Exactly.
That's how I think of it. Okay.
Yeah, totally. But it is, if you do the query on bulk loader, that comes up. And of course, you're stuck with the problem of, but my data came from a database, like a relational database or a file, on file somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not in ssstable format. Now what do I do? And actually, the answer there is kind of painful.
cqlsh copy?
Not quite. Yeah, right. Exactly. And then I think the other tool that I'll make a plug on the analytics side is if the data is sitting in a distributed system, a distributed file system, S3, HDFS, even our DSEFS, you use Spark to read that data in bulk and use the Spark Cassandra connector or the DSE Spark connector to put the data in as well. But that's sort of, if your data is in a distributed place.
Right, okay. And that makes perfect sense. There are definitely some use cases where using Spark would be the perfectly sensible thing to do.
Absolutely. And then the last one, I guess, is you write your own program, which is
wait, that's what you did. We skipped one because
I'm sorry. There is one more.
You did write a bulk loader of your own.
I did. So the other one was thank you. I've already moved on to DS Bulk.
That's fine.
So the other challenge was what is the best way, and I did a little bit of a study on that. We talked about it at Cassandra Summit in 2015 about comparing a bunch of things, and writing through the front door of Cassandra and CQL was a very efficient way to do it if you use some best practices. And so I wrote a tool that kind of codified those things into read delimited files and used them, called Cassandra Loader, and it was out there. I'm proud of it.
Incrementally better than what was out there previously.
Correct, and but still a community tool, right? Yeah. There was also this challenge of there was like one developer part-time. Right. So if you had an issue, like I would go occasionally and kind of clear out some little things, but that's not, what you expect from a big distributed system. Is
moderately well supported GitHub project, as you do.
Right. Exactly. That said, people needed it. They used it. There are people out there who used it in production. I think the big benefit from my involvement in that project was really seeing what are people really trying to do with it. Yeah, right. This was a way to kind of crowdsource what's the need.
There you go.
And that was great. It was a lot of interesting things. And then, I added some stuff there where one guy needed it. We were like, all right, well, maybe that's not as important.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk. So you had a great learning experience, learn what people needed, basically crowdsource the requirements for this. Yeah. So DS Bulk is the result. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the first myth I'll dispel is it is not, we took Cassandra Loader and brought it into DataStax and refined it and pushed it out.
That's not what we did.
We did not.
Okay.
There was the DataStax team that does drivers knew a lot about the best ways to push data into the database, and they took the learnings of some of the things that I had learned in Cassandra Loader, some of the things they knew way more than I did, and so it is basically ground up rebuild of this whole idea.
Okay.
There were a few tips and tricks that they stole when, imitation is the best form of flattery. So I was all set with that.
Yeah.
And the tool is I would direct anybody in that direction now.
Okay, so let's back up because we went a little backwards.
Yeah, sorry.
First of all, we talked a little how it was made. Yeah, but what is DS Bulk? Just give me like the nutshell.
DS Bulk is loading from files, delimited and JSON. That was one of the things we learned through Cassandra Loader. There was a JSON need out there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
We picked those formats. We have ways to extend it. Like when we built the tool, we thought forward to other things we might need later. But starting with delimited files and JSON, and kind of the idea of like I've got a pile of files here on my laptop or on a Linux server, and I just want to push it into the database.
Yeah.
I want to handle things like the number format might be different because of internationalization. I might want to. The big one that everybody always bumps into is your date format is always goofy.
Date format, month, date, swap.
Exactly. Yeah. How are we doing it? So we want to support that. Configuring how to interpret the data, right? So the formats, but also then control how we want to connect to the database with things like security. Do I need to have password security or Kerberos? All these things that are now getting into that enterprise level.
Yes.
That's always a little bit painful.
Right.
So the idea, I got a pile of files here, and I really just want to put them there, and please do it efficiently. And that's kind of the crux of what DS Bulk is trying to go after.
Okay. So you mentioned some sort of lightweight transformations that take place with respect to dates, but what about transforms in general?
Yeah, so this was one of the things that I think we tried to sort of stay very narrow on, was that we're going to just take the files that are ready to be loaded and load them. So no, there's a handful of transformations of things like a pretty common thing in Cassandra is to throw a timestamp in for a record, and you do that by calling the now function. So we wanted to be able to say, well, you can do the now and add like a column
you can
on.
Use now.
So, that kind of thing. So, but that's about it. None of this, I want to change everything to uppercase. We're just going to be trying to take the files and put them in. And the idea there is there are other tools that do that, and we can bring those in. So if you want to use Perl or Python or awk, I'm an awk guy myself, to tweak whatever the data is, and then pipe it in, right? We wanted to support standard in and standard out. So that we can get these
I love
flows.
This idea. The standard Unix command line utility. It's one function. It does one thing. It does it really well.
Right, and then you chain them. And
chain it together.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, I always do this. You want to load data. You also want to unload it. We want to have the symmetry of I need
implied.
to take right.
Yeah.
But the same sort of deal. How do you want the data to look when it comes on out?
Okay.
On that one, you do have some things like I only need these 3 columns. Like I don't need all the data.
Oh,
I just need a couple columns.
Right.
So let's just take that out. That one actually will let you throw in a where clause. Like maybe you only want like one. If you're trying to debug something, I need only this partition.
Or a limit clause?
A limit clause would work as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's funny. Yeah, you could do that with CQL, or you could just pipe it to head, right? So
okay. So you did make some affordances. Yeah.
Yeah, and so on the unloading, it's much easier. On the loading, there is some stuff, and it's probably not on this sort of chat to kind of get into the details of, but there's powerful ways to sort of indicate this column in the input file is supposed to be like the name column in the database, and this column is supposed to be the address column.
Right.
So there's ways to articulate. To me, that's just a mapping of, field 7 is zip code, right? It's not really a transform as much as understand what the format is.
Okay.
But yeah, to chain those things together and keep it nice and simple. I think that when it tries to get fancy, you start now, like we didn't want to build an entire ETL system as a single process on one node.
That wasn't on the product roadmap, huh?
No. I mean, I would refer people over to Spark and Analytics to do those sorts of things.
Okay, but I can tell that you are proud of the baby here.
Yes.
So let's brag on things a little bit. Like what makes this a better tool?
So I think the one of the things that we sort of said, if we're going to do bulk, we got to do it fast. Okay. So there's a performance angle to this. And the question is sort of like, all right, so but how? Or we'll start with how much faster.
Oh, yeah, I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How much faster is it?
So we compare ourselves to the 2 big tools when we were thinking was to compare the performance of CQLSH and the Cassandra loader tool, since it's out there in the community.
Okay. And you did.
We did. We exceeded Cassandra loader by a fair amount, and CQLSH by about like 4x.
Okay.
So it's just, okay, this is the tool you would use, the supported, capable tool, 4x performance. In terms of how we measure that, the idea is like, how fast can your laptop push data to the cluster? Not that we like the cluster is the limiting factor. You need to make the cluster big enough to handle anything.
Yes, of course, right.
So it's how efficient can we make this tool? And there's sort of a few pieces to that. One is how well can you parse the files themselves. Let's make that very efficient.
Sure.
And then the other is the part, like I said, the Java driver team was very well suited to being the ones to go, well, this is how I would push the absolute limits of the Java driver to push data.
Okay, so you are using Java driver, the DataStax Java driver to push data in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's some advancements there that I think we'll see roll into the driver itself in terms of ease of use and capabilities.
Okay.
Those are sort of futures, but there's a lot of lessons learned where we went, we should steal that trick and let everybody else get in on the fun.
Nice. Okay.
So the one angle is performance. The other one, I spent a long career in data in general, and oftentimes data is messy, and so errors and how you want to handle. But do you want to stop on the first error, or do you just sort of say, well, what are we going to do when we hit an error? Like the date format is different. You could. I mean, that's a very reasonable thing to want to do. It's usually not what I wanted to do. When I worked on this stuff, I sort of wanted to take the 7 lines that were terrible out of 1 million and just copy them to another file, right? And so that's sort of the approach we took is you can set what is your threshold. If you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of errors, then we kind of want everything to stop.
Okay, so there is a point at which you're like, okay, this is too much. This file is clearly not well suited for import according to the schema of this table, so just abort.
And there's actually to that end, there is if you're super safe person, there's a dry run where it'll go through the file and see if there's an issue.
Of course,
and that's perfect for with some of the there's no rollback, so you can't take out what you put in. So if you really need to be very safe about it, there's a safety mechanism. We
support good data hygiene.
That's right. Yeah. There's so the MO in my mind is you run this, and if you get this bad file, the file is going to have all the lines as they were written in the original one, so that you can go and make whatever changes. I'd say the big common ones are things like the date format was different in these few records for whatever reason. Another big one is if you've got strings in your in your data,
and
you
quote
have
mark.
and if you don't put quotes, then you have a delimiter, and then it's the number of fields is wrong. I don't
Never done that.
No,
I mean, I hear that
other people gave me that.
I hear
kind
that
of data.
people do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then you can just like, if it's only a few, then you just modify those, and then you could even run the bulk loader again on this new file with different arguments or whatever. I've also seen, as data goes in, it's coming from somewhere. Someone changed how the data was produced. They changed the printf, and so now you're like halfway through the file, it just changes, and so you're like, okay, well, now I can run it a second time with a different command. So try to keep it simple.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of error handling. There's a lot of metrics around how's my performance, how much writes per second and bytes per second am I actually pushing. That's kind of the metric that you would want for
right.
But you can see the progress then and see how things are going and see that things are actually getting inserted. A little bit of visibility. I hate the tools where you hit go and there's nothing. And then you get the prompt back at the end and you're like, did anything happen? Or did you just sleep? So this is trying to give that, visibility. You can track how
0 results, 29.7 seconds.
Right. Thanks. So, and then it's crazy configurable. And actually that's good. And I always worry a little bit when we make things too configurable. There's a lot of docs on how to get into all the details, but we took like the top 20 and made sort of shortcut arguments
very nice.
for those. So like the host is just -h,
right,
as opposed to the bigger, longer name or whatever. But it does allow for that flexibility.
Okay.
So that's been sort of like, to me, those are the big parts. It's the ease of use, and then the speed is kind of the only way I would be measuring a bulk loading tool.
Okay. All right. So can I refer to you as sort of like a proud parent of this project?
Yeah, absolutely.
We know we like to brag on our kids, but then we also kind of know some of the growth areas, let's say. So like, what were some of the hard parts of this effort and kind of seeing this come to fruition?
Yeah, I think that understanding like how to really turn the screws in the right way of the driver for the use cases. So we did have some learnings where there were times where we compared against some of the other tools. We're like, we really should have done better, but this use case is a little weird.
Is this a tuning problem, or are we actually talking about?
It was in the development level. I think we've taken all those learnings and applied it. So that was the challenge in the process of building it. In terms of using it, I think it's a new tool, so understanding the way in which the config is set up and how you want to I need to change the delimiter. That's going to be in this part of the configuration. I think that's probably the hardest part. There's some
so like a user experience,
a little bit,
and
I
interface.
think it's something I guess I'm just sensitive to any new tool.
Yeah.
Is it going to be easy? The feedback we've gotten is it's straightforward, right? I mean, and so it's mostly easy once you sort of go, okay, yeah, this is how the sets of components are set up or where to go for help. We also, I think there's a lot of configurations around or flexibility around is it a directory of input files, or do you want all the input files in that directory, or just like the .csvs, and how do I articulate some of
so
those?
like wildcarding?
Yeah, and you can actually do that. You can you can say there's a directory here and I just want all of it, but I only want the .csv ones, not the other things, and sort of being able to progress through that. I think that there's also this question of do you want to, people have asked in some of the early questions we got back was well, what if my data's in S3? And I think it's going back into that, well, then I probably wouldn't use this tool. Right. Now come back to some of the other tools.
Or like a XML file like I was asking you recently about.
Yeah, so that's the other challenge is if the data is not actually in the right format, that is the other question. Well, what should I do? And my answer to that would be, what do you like? Right? Like if you like Python, use Python. If you like, the Graph Loader tool that we have for DSE uses Groovy. And if you really want Groovy, then write a Groovy script. This is all going back to the
transform to
together.
JSON, or CSV, and pipe it in.
Right, exactly. We'll leave that to be not part of the problem of the tool. XML is one where I think we could think about if this is a common enough use case, we'll just bring in an XML.
If you start
parser.
Hearing that request frequently enough.
If you ask it enough times, then we'll add it to the to-do list. But no, we're trying to make it, like I said, we made it to be an extensible tool. We're not necessarily making it to be that the world is able to add the extensions, but we made it knowing we're going to want to have other formats. We're going to want to have other options here under the hood that we'll want to be bringing in, and so we thought forward in that way.
Okay.
It's a command line tool. There were thoughts of, well, what about as a GUI someday? And I think that we still think as a GUI someday it'd be good, but we built it with the command line interface is kind of, you can rip that off and put a GUI on, and the engine stays the same. You know, we thought about those things, we built it.
Well, I have a few product ideas for you.
All right.
Well, you know, we'll talk about those
Perfect.
later offline. Okay, so there is an existing Graph Loader product that we have. People who are familiar with DSE Graph, our graph database. So can you help kind of disambiguate there? What's the relationship between DS Bulk and this Graph Loader that we have?
Yeah, so I think the Graph Loader is great. It's built for graph data to come in, and it interacts with DSE Graph very well. It's sort of the MO of some of the challenges that you have when you work with graph data involves a bit more transformations of how should I be interpreting this stuff. Yeah. So the Graph Loader actually incorporated a lot of these transforms in, because the operation of loading data into graph really kind of needs that really close. You could, of course, always have something upstream that did a Java program to convert the data to another format and then use the Graph Loader on that. I mean, that was always still part of the story. We did not want to do that in terms of just loading tabular data. It very naturally is like, well, CSV is a pretty tabular sort of structure, and JSON. So we targeted on that use case. Okay. I will say that we're aware of these two tools, right? Right. And we don't want there to be two in the long run, but we really wanted to build the right tool, you know, for the tabular data, right? And not like hijack the graph.
The representation of a graph seems different, not entirely dissimilar, but there could be enough differences that you want to get each one of those right before we start thinking about merging those concepts.
Yeah, and then the merge is absolutely right. I mean, regardless of whether or not we somehow are able to put it all under one umbrella, or if we just have one interface to two tools, we do kind of want to have these things merged together in one way. We wanted to focus on DS Bulk on tabular data, because that's what, you know, the bulk of DSE and Cassandra is, right? The use is really on there, and let's target for that as opposed to targeting for graph and trying to like bolt on tabular. We want to make sure that they're both really getting the good love. I think it's a goal for ours to bring the paths of these two tools together, so there's only one tool. How that'll look, and that's sort of bearing out, and we'll see how things go forward.
Now, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share as we're wrapping up about where bulk loading is going? Future directions.
So that's a good question. I think the big part for us is we got to. I'll brag, so you call it my baby. I think that's a little unfair. There totally needs to be a shout out to the whole team that was working on this. I get to be the one in front of the camera, so I'll claim all the credit, but that's totally not fair. That team, we built, actually, we had goals to really just deliver the delimited file, and we're able to just go, actually, we did this pretty quickly and pretty well, and we're pretty happy with it, and kind of excited about this project. Let's do the JSON stuff too. And so we grabbed that and kind of came in. I think we're at a good spot to really be getting feedback from everybody, right? It's the new tool, it's out there. It does very basic things very well. We know that. We know it goes beyond that as well. But now we really want to see, well, where do people need to drive it? Is it maybe an advanced security piece that we had taken, or there's an opportunity there? If it's input formats like XML, where we say let's add that. Obviously, more people run it, they're going to bump into some issue that we didn't see in our testing, because you can't test everything. So we're sort of expecting, as this gets used, we'll see some bumps. That happens. But right now we're kind of, I think, in receive mode. Where's this coming? We have no obvious next steps that we really want to be getting out there. It's in V1 is out with DSE 6. It's actually included in DSE when you download it. Okay. It's right there in the bin directory, but it's also a standalone tool. Runs on Windows and on Linux.
On Windows as well. Oh wow.
Yeah, Windows. It was exciting. So we kind of, again, you got a lot of people, actually Windows developers, working on stuff and writing applications to go against the database, and they want to be able to load right from there.
And why not?
Exactly. So it's also downloadable as a standalone tool, so you don't have to have DSE to pull it down, but just this tool separately. So I think really for us, we're excited to hear people use it and kind of nudge us in a direction. A lot of good pieces. It's funny because it is just going back to the beginning of this conversation. It's just kind of a given, like it should just do, right? It should just be there. No one wants to think about it, and I think we sort of are in the same place. We don't want you to think about the pain either. Just use the tool and go. And if
there you go. Yeah, no, I think it's a great boon to our developer and operations community, and one of those areas that honestly, you don't maybe think about, it's not front of mind when you're thinking about distributed systems, distributed databases, and adopting them. So we're glad to have it, and we're glad to have you on.
So thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Terrific. Thanks.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel, or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.